John, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon to the December 4th meeting of the Technical Advisory Committee. As always, we will start with introductions, going this direction.
Shauna Gauze, Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authorities.
Derek Montani, City of Cloverdale.
Torina Wilson, City of Santa Rosa.
Brendan Barrett, Town of Windsor.
Chris Barney, SCTCA.
Joanne Parker, Smart.
Ashley Cotter, City of Sonoma.
Vanessa Garrett, Sonoma County.
Hunter McLaughlin, Sonoma County Pie.
Giovanna Quezada, Sonoma County Pie.
Edie Takata, City of Roanoke Park.
Elizabeth Tyrese, Sonoma County Regional Parks.
Terry Swillinger, City of Healdsburg.
And Larry Zimmer, City of Healdsburg. In the back of the room, just shout out.
Dana
Oh,
Trey,
Adam.
SCTCA.
Adam Garcia, SCTCA.
Steph Britt, SCTCA.
Look how prepared you guys are back there. Do we have anyone online?
There are no, actually, we do have some online people, sorry. We have David Raperta from SCTCA, Ross Clendenin, SCTCA, Margot Akanis from SCTCA. Steven?
All right. Thank you.
Here.
Seeing no one from the public, I'm assuming we have no public comment. Next up is approval of the meeting minutes from October 23rd. Does anyone have comments or changes? Seeing none, we will assume that passes unanimously. Onward to item 4, the community-based transportation plans for South Santa Rosa and Roanoke Park.
That'll be me. So I have two presentations on two pretty different topics. So let's go ahead and start out with the community-based transportation plans. I'll go ahead and get that up on the screen here. It says I'm sharing. Try that again.
Looks like you might be sharing the wrong screen though.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Oh.
I can kind of see your screen.
Yeah. Don, can you share the?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Hold on one second. We're having technical difficulties.
Audio is going through.
I think you have our camera shared right now, right, Don?
What's not working? I don't understand what's not working.
All right, let me stop and start again. Try the entire screen.
So that you're sharing, Chris.
Okay, it's just not showing up there.
Do you have the screen share?
Never had this problem.
You should do it.
I don't have. Or we had a group in here yesterday in our equipment. I don't know something.
Want to start us with some Christmas carols?
First day of Christmas.
Well, I can start talking through it, one thing we want to definitely take a look at is we have a map of projects that would be nice to look at. If not, I'll walk through the community-based transportation plans and you can take a look after the fact and see the maps and the list of projects. But over the last few years, we've been working on developing community-based transportation plans for two areas, one in Central Roanoke Park and one in South Santa Rosa. We've developed community-based transportation plans for a number of areas in the county already, and the program's really focused on looking at transportation needs in areas where folks are often overlooked. And so it's a regional program with a focus on equity priority communities. So MTC uses information on income, ethnicity, and a number of other factors to identify geographic areas of disadvantage across the region. And so all of those areas are eligible to have specific targeted planning done in those areas to identify transportation needs and projects. And there's specific and directed funding attached and directed to those areas as well. So there's an incentive to actually talk to folks in the community, and there's potential for resources and money attached to that as well. So each of these plans includes a demographic analysis of the area, including mapping, robust community engagement. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, what we did to talk to the community. Documentation of transportation challenges. So we talk to people about how it is to get around in their communities, and it's really neighborhood focused, so local transportation focused. And then the highlight of each of the plans is a community prioritized project list. So we talk to them about needs and barriers, and then come up with ideas for addressing those challenges. And then finally, there's an implementation plan that talks about funding, how long it would take to implement these projects, and possible funding sources. So let me bring up the presentation, at least for me, to help me walk through it. So I mentioned we developed a number of community-based transportation plans in the past. We prepared one for Roseland area and Santa Rosa, the Russian River area, the Springs area in Sonoma Valley, and Central Healdsburg. So as part of this last round, we looked at equity priority communities that hadn't been analyzed in the past in Sonoma County, and Central Rohnert Park and South Santa Rosa along the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor, both identified as areas we haven't looked at the past that we'd like to look at in more detail this time around. So we worked with the city of Santa Rosa and Rohnert Park to develop 2 plans for each of these areas. So there's a nice map of the study area, a little more exciting today. Here you can see pictures from the community resource fairs. So a lot of people, a lot of different age groups. So it was cool to see kids out there having fun, jumping around on the bus, helping vote as well, and what types of things they'd like to see in the community. You can see examples of the few of the boards that we had out there. So folks could use colored dots to kind of vote for their preferred improvements. And one fun thing we did for the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor is we had some street profiles that people could drop different improvements on, like bike lanes, new lanes, crossing improvements, things like that. So that was a fun activity to get some ideas on how folks would like to see Santa Rosa Avenue change. And that was one of the main findings from that South Santa Rosa Avenue plan is people want to see that corridor change. It's hard to get through if you're not in a car. It kind of acts like a highway or freeway at this point. So a lot of ideas there that we gathered as part of both the first round of outreach and the community resource fairs. So Don, can we go to the next slide, please? So here's just a list of the participants for each of those resource fairs. You can see a few additional pictures, including folks checking out the buses. Redwood Bike Share was there providing training on the bike share program. So yeah, fun events. We had between 50 and 60 people attend each of them, which, pretty good group in attendance at each one. So let's move to the next slide. So again, here's a picture of outreach. So the premier output of this was identifying some CBTP projects. So let's go to the next slide. So we ended up with a long list of project ideas based on feedback from the community and city staff. I would mention that the project ideas that we moved forward, we wanted to make sure those were feasible. So we checked in and worked with city staff to make sure they were consistent with the active transportation plans, CIPs, and general plans. So from that long list of projects, we work with the community and the community resource committees to come up with priorities for each area. So let's go to the next slide, Don, for South Santa Rosa. So this is a little hard to see here, but I'll walk through just at a very high level the priority projects we identified for South Santa Rosa. I encourage you to take a look at the plan. There's a nice map in each of the plans along with the description. But a lot of the focus was on shared youth pathways and pedestrian and bicycle improvements. So for the South Santa Rosa area, that included recommendations for a shared use pathway on Yolanda Avenue, a shared use pathway on Colgan Avenue, improved connections on Kiwanis Springs Road, and a lot of the focus in this area was on improving connections to Taylor Mountain Regional Park as well. On overall corridor improvements, a big focus was on looking at the Santa Rosa Avenue corridor, improving bus stops in that area, crossing, slowing down speeds, making it easier to get around and cross if you're not in a car. So there's a long list of ideas on what could be done there, but at the same time, we wanted to keep it somewhat general so it fits in with whatever the city of Santa Rosa is able to implement in the corridor. There were also many recommendations for improving non-auto options in Petaluma Hill Road. So again, that's not super easy to navigate if you're not in a car, including crossings connecting the rest of the area and the neighborhoods to the west with Taylor Mountain Regional Park. And then there were a number of recommendations for improvements to the transit system to make it easier to get around in the area and improve connections with downtown Santa Rosa, including extending Santa Rosa City Bus Route 3 further south and improving connections across 101 as well. So right now it's pretty hard to get across Highway 101 from this part of town to Southwest Santa Rosa. So, and a lot of that's already kind of in the works at Santa Rosa City Bus. So they already are thinking about that. So it was nice to see the community bring up things that have already been worked on before. So Don, can we go to the next page? So in the plan, there's a lot of detail and more information on each of these projects, but we've included who the implementing agency would be, whether or not it would be appropriate for quick build type approaches, really rough cost and time frame. So we didn't have a dollar amount, but we had kind of a rough cost and then priority based on community feedback. So let's go to the next slide, which will be Rohnert Park, and I'll bring it up here so I can actually see it. But again, here there is a pretty big focus on corridor improvements in this area. And one thing we heard a lot in Central Rohnert Park that we heard a little bit less of in Santa Rosa was hearing a lot about speed reductions and crossings. So there were recommendations to re-envision Snyder Lane, make it easier to cross, slow down speeds, look at speed management on State Farm Drive and Enterprise Drive, add sidewalks, especially connecting the rest of the neighborhood with the SMART station in Central Rohnert Park. There was interest in installing a multi-use path on Golf Course Drive at the northern portion of the area. We received a lot of recommendations for transit stop improvements, including shade, benches, even water for pets and dogs and things like that, and real-time information signage and infrastructure. So heard a lot about that. So that's on the list of priorities here. Southwest Belt Boulevard is another corridor residents were interested in re-envisioning. There's interest in buffered bike lanes on Adrian Drive at the southern end of the study area. And then the last two, Evergreen Elementary School is in the study area, and there's a lot of interest in making it easier to get to that school if you're not driving. So they have a pretty big drop off and pick off issue up there. And so they recommended moving some bus stops to make it easier to access that school on transit and improving crossings to make it easier to walk, get there on foot as well. And then finally, one component of the Central Roner Park project was to look specifically at the Copeland Creek overcrossing. So there's been a proposal in Roner Park to construct a bike ped overcrossing connecting the east and west side of Roner Park as well. So we did some specific outreach associated with that. And there was pretty wide and overall support for seeing some sort of improvement in overcrossing in that area as well. So we'll have another memo focused specifically on that as one of the deliverables for the project. So Don, next slide, please. So again, yeah, if you could just go back one really quick, Don. So again, a lot more information in the actual plan. We did a similar type of analysis, identifying implementing agency, quick build, cost and time frame, and priority based on community feedback. So let's go ahead and go to the last slide. So next steps, the draft plans are out and open for comment right now. We'll be presenting that to the board of directors on Monday, getting feedback from them. Our public comment period will close at the end of next week, and we'll take any feedback we get on the draft plans, turn those into the final documents, and release those by the end of the year. So we'll have 2 more plans that we can act on. And going forward, we'll be looking at that CARE funding coming from MTC, seeing how we can line up some of that funding with these projects. Also identifying other funding sources that may be able to implement some of these projects. And then one thing we do as we update our comprehensive transportation plan is we look back at the list of projects identified in each of these plans and report out on progress. So we've done that for the Roseland, all those previous plans, the Roseland plan, the Healdsburg plan, the Springs plan, and the Russian River Monterey plan. So it's important to demonstrate that we're making progress in implementing some of these. And we've been seeing that a lot of this stuff is getting done in these areas. So it's a nice success story that we're able to get out into the community, see what they want and what they recommend, and actually get some of those projects done. So we'll do that with these projects as well, and these CBTPs. We're still working on our draft CTP. So we're going to try and fit these into our final CTP as well as part of this CTP update. So that's where we're at right now to draft plans out on the street. So there are links in the staff report in the agenda packet if you'd like to go take a look. But yeah, another set of plans we can draw from, but it's great to actually get it out in the community and hear what members of the neighborhood and those areas would like to see. So hopefully that'll help make these projects more competitive for different funding sources. That's it for the CBTPs. So happy to answer any questions and glad to take any feedback.
Not seeing any questions. We all admire your ability to focus through the beginning of that. How did you guys select those 2 locations for doing these plans this time around?
So we took a look at where we'd done the CBTPs in the past, and we looked at the map of equity priority communities, and these 2 locations jumped right out as areas we hadn't looked at in the past. They were, we knew there were issues there. So yeah, that's the decision. And talking with city staff, pitching the idea to see if they were interested in participating and collaborating on it as well was part of the process. But with these two, we have pretty good coverage across the county. Some of the CBTPs are getting a little old now. The Roseland one was completed in 2007. So there are a few other areas in the county which we haven't looked at specifically yet. There's some areas in Santa Rosa that are EPCs we could do plans for, but as this program continues, we'd like to refresh some of those older plans as well. Get back out, reassess the priorities, report out on the successes of things that have been implemented as well. So there are lots of successes in each of the areas.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we will move on to item number 5, vehicle miles traveled mitigation program for Sonoma County, a final recommendations report.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Don has asked just to verify that everybody online can hear us now.
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for bearing with us with our technical difficulties. Should I try and share again, Don? Okay, fingers crossed. All right, we got at least a little bit of it. Let me think I can make it the full screen here. All right, you can see me here already. All right, thanks for bearing with us. So this is a much different project. So I'm going to be reporting out on our Sonoma County VMT mitigation program and study that we've been working on for the last couple of years. This is all really tied to Senate Bill 743, which was enacted in 2013, which really shifted the way transportation impacts are assessed in CEQA. So this legislation shifted the way transportation impacts are analyzed away from level of service. And I read something earlier this week that level of service had been used for about 50 years. So it was quite a change in how transportation impacts are analyzed. So, and everyone's still learning how to do this in CEQA. So this study was intended to help with that. So the legislature came out with SB 743, directed the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, which has been renamed LCI, Land Use and Climate Innovation is the new name for that state department, basically tasked them with coming up with a new metric for measuring transportation impacts, and they identified vehicle miles traveled. So vehicle miles traveled is very different than level of service. Level of service is really looking at congestion around a project, right? Like within the vicinity. VMT is looking at regional travel. So how much and how far people are traveling. So quite a change. The tools used to measure it are very different. Level of service, you can drop a traffic counter tube out and get an idea, right? Level of service, you have to use tools or some sort of formula to come up with a calculation. And this really changed the mitigation focus from congestion to that regional VMT. And the state set an implementation deadline for July 1st, 2020. So we've been working with jurisdictions to try and figure out what to do since it is quite a change. So at SCTCA, we've been providing support in a number of ways. Up until now, you've been hearing me talk about this for the last 10 years, probably more, bringing updates to the TAC and our advisory committees. As we learn information about what the state's doing, what other jurisdictions and counties are doing, we produce VMT screening maps that can be used to determine if specific analysis needs to be done for projects. So those are available on our website. We use our travel model to produce those, and those are in use all the time when projects are coming in and being proposed. We also produce VMT data and estimates and do some project level VMT analysis. A number of years ago, we produced a VMT mitigation and reduction calculator, which developers or lead agencies can use to look at different mitigation approaches or projects that could mitigate VMT on site. So you can plug in your project You can click different boxes and it'll give you a reduction percentage. So that's been in use for the last couple of years as well. But up to about 2 or 3 years ago, we were hearing from local jurisdictions, the planners especially, that there's a concern that there isn't going to be a way to mitigate VMT impacts on site. And there's been a movement at the state and the regional level to look at some way to offset VMT impacts offsite. And the state put forward a potential option to develop VMT mitigation banking and exchange programs. So we actually applied for a Caltrans grant to study this further, to come up with some recommendations for some sort of program for Sonoma County. So we applied and got that grant. And then we worked over the last couple of years with a project TAC made up of many of you or your colleagues at the staff level, transit providers, and also reps from MTC and Caltrans. And we worked with consultants from Fair and Peers to, analyze what's going on across the state and come up with some recommendations for a potential mitigation program for Sonoma County. So the goal was to really look for ways for land development projects with vehicle miles traveled impacts to mitigate their projects by implementing projects or programs off-site that would, offset their impacts. So the first part of that was to provide some background information on VMT, CEQA, and VMT mitigation programs that have been studied or implemented across the state. And we found there aren't many that have actually been implemented. There's just a handful. There are a number that have been studied, but this is all new and everyone's grappling with how we can do this. Then the next step was to work with project stakeholders and local agencies to really identify what we'd like to be included in some sort of mitigation program. Then we worked with the consultant and the project TAC to identify different types of mitigation programs and what would be most appropriate for Sonoma County. We did that. We presented to the TAC and the rest of our committees on the summer on how a VMT exchange would work. So that was the initial recommendation, was a VMT exchange. So you may remember Fair and Peers walking through how that would work. So I believe it was June or July. So if you want to review that, you can go on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and rewatch the TAC meeting, and you can go through the steps there. So with that initial recommendation, we wanted to test how that would actually work in practice. So we took some example or sample projects and plugged them into the VMT exchange framework to see how it would work, including the effectiveness of different VMT reduction measures and how much it would cost. So we had 2 demonstration workshops over the summer that looked into those details, and I'll go through some of the findings from those workshops. And then the final step is to provide a final recommendation for what we should do next. So I'll talk about that today. So our draft report was released in the summer, so many of you may have looked at that. It's a very long document, but the bulk or the body of that, it's in the first 80 pages. There are huge appendices if you want to dig into formulas and background data. So if you want a briefer look, you can focus on that first section. This may look familiar. These are the steps for how a VMT exchange would work that Fair and Peers walked through over the summer. So going from project initiation to quantifying reductions in costs of different types of VMT reductions, getting something initiated, things like monitoring and reporting. And I do want to note that we worked closely with our legal counsel all through this, and there are a lot of legal issues that we worked through with them, but that are still outstanding. So they were good partners on this, especially since we're dealing with CEQA. And it's kind of it's a big change. And it's not just the planners and the engineers that are struggling with this. The legal folks are trying to figure it out as well. So it's all pretty new and fresh. So here's a look at some of the type of stuff we looked at in our demonstration workshops. So the first demonstration workshop, we really walked through how a VMT exchange would work. And the Cliff Notes version or elevator pitch of that is a developer with a project with a VMT impact could come in. There would be a list of VMT reducing projects with costs attached and VMT reductions attached they could choose from. And they could basically implement one of those projects to offset their VMT impacts. So a lot more information in the report. And if you want to watch the step-by-step walkthrough from Fair and Peers, again, I encourage you to take a look at that recording of the old TAC meeting, or give me a call and I can walk through it with you again if you want as well. So a lot of information in detail there. So here's what we determined after walking through how this would work. Still a lot of outstanding questions and concern. One is the mitigation length. So what is the life of the project? What would happen if your mitigation stops? So one example or one item on the list was expanding the bike share program here in Sonoma County as a VMT mitigation action. So, one question was, what if that stops, right? What if the bikes are no longer on the street? You're required to provide mitigation for the life of the impact. So what do you do then? So something that we've been working with our legal counsel on how to deal with that. Another big issue that the legal community is really focused on is additionality. So when implementing mitigation, you have to be implementing things that wouldn't have already happened. So a lot of questions associated with that and CIP lists, things that are in plans and other things like that. So that's another legal issue to grapple with. During our demonstration workshops, we heard a lot of concern and interest in making sure mitigation stays local. So the nature of these mitigation banks and exchanges are they're regional. So there's the risk that a project in one location could potentially implement a project somewhere way different or somewhere further away, right? So there are concerns about how to balance that out. The state's also grappling with that as part of their study on a statewide program, but another very important issue that we need to work through. One thing that we heard from housing developers specifically or experts is some of the costs were really high. So it may not be feasible for some of these developers to actually implement some of this stuff because it would cost too much and make the projects not pencil out. There's a monitoring and reporting requirement for mitigation. So someone would have to be that. So the recommendation is in the report is for SCTCA to be the administrating agency. So we'd have to have a monitoring and reporting system set up, and we'd have to find for a way to pay for that. But there are no or limited resources to actually start or run the program right now. So another issue to work through. Towards the end of the project, after the demonstration workshops, we had a final TAC meeting and talked about, okay, where's everyone at? Are you having a lot of projects coming in that need this right now? And it was pretty uncertain that there isn't a pressing need right now for an exchange or bank. We also did a closeout survey, and the general consensus from the planners is there aren't a lot of projects coming in with VMT impacts that need offsite mitigation right now, but they anticipate that rising in the future, but it's not super pressing. And there's also some interest in a different type of setup of VMT bank where the developer could just pay money. It's more complex, but there's interest in other types of frameworks. So, but we did hear from our VMT TAC that a lot of the stuff that we've been doing in the past, like producing the VMT screening maps and VMT summaries, have been useful. So there's support for us to continue to do that. There's, local staff would like to have us continue to bring updates on VMT, what's happening in the VMT overall universe at the state and regional level to our advisory committees. So we can continue to do that if there's an appetite. And there's interest in convening a countywide working group to meet maybe quarterly to talk about what's going on at the state level and to really check in to see if that local need is actually rising. And if we need to dig back into this again and start working on initiating something. So there are a number of other things going on in the region and across the state right now too that are in the mix. So it's not just what's happening here in Sonoma County. We're hearing both from local folks and from colleagues across the state that there's been a lot of streamlining in CEQA that's making it easier for certain types of projects to be implemented. So, which is reducing the need for mitigation. So, there are also very limited programs, VMT mitigation programs in operation around the state right now, just a handful of those. So it's a very complicated issue with a lot of legal things to work through. So not many people have jumped yet to move forward with something. And there have been a number of legal challenges as well on how different counties and communities are implementing VMT mitigation. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. But the state and Caltrans are both looking at a statewide and regional VMT mitigation program as well. So the state program is looking specifically at funding affordable housing. So coming up with some sort of banking system that projects with VMT impacts could pay into to subsidize affordable housing development. And then Caltrans is looking at something at the region as well. So based on that, SCTCA staff and our legal counsel are recommending that we wait and see what happens with the state and regional system, that we continue that we set up that countywide working group and meet to see if, the need for a local program becomes more, rises to the top. I guess I jumped ahead a slide here. So this is just a summary of what's in the final reports. We have a final report out on the street right now. It identifies a VMT exchange with SCTCA as the administrator, which was what we presented in the summer. There's a lot of information in there. I encourage you to take a look if you're interested in the details. A lot of steps left, but I already spoiled the staff recommendation here. We're recommending that we wait and see what happens at the state and regional level, right? We are committed to maintaining our VMT tools that are critical to local implementation of SB 743, like the maps and the VMT reduction calculator. So we'll prioritize that. We'll provide updates as major things happen, let you all know what's going on. And we're always available if you have questions as well. So please give me a call or reach out if you have questions about VMT or need support. And then we're happy to form a VMT working group to talk about this on a quarterly level. If there's not anything going on, we can cancel the meeting and meet in 3 more months. So if you're interested in that or have colleagues or staff that you'd like to participate, please let me know and we can get that set up early next year. I think the first few meetings that group would meet on could discuss that state program and what's happening. They're targeting to have something in place by next summer, so very soon. So we'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, long project, very detailed. So there's a lot of information in that report. So if it does come to the point where we want to start implementing a local program, we have a lot of the foundation already studied and covered in that report. So if we get to the point where there's a appetite to do that, we can go back to that report and build on what was done there. But yeah, happy to answer any questions now or later. Please give me a call or email if you have any questions that pop up later, and happy to hear any comments or concerns with the staff recommendation right now. So that's what we're taking to the board on Monday.
Any questions? I have one. So let's say in your wait and see, you see that there is a need coming up. How quickly do you think it could be turned around? I mean, there's still a lot of unanswered questions from a legal standpoint,
Yeah.
would it be reactive to specific project, or is it more of we're seeing a trend, now we're gonna try to figure it out, and it's a couple of years still?
It would be the latter for a countywide program, but we could definitely work with a specific jurisdiction to work through some solutions at the local level. So we're pretty well connected with the other counties and the way that they're handling this. So, you know, I think we could come up with some ideas on how to work through this. We've also developed a pretty good relationship with our legal counsel, and they've learned a lot on this. So that's a huge benefit. Just having our legal staff very aware of the issue. And Fern Ball, some of you may know him. He's our legal counsel on this. He's kind of an expert on BMT and Northern California right now as well. So that's been a benefit of the project as well, getting our legal counsel up to speed. So we're much further along than we were, but even if we were recommending that we implement something right now, we'd probably be at least a year out from getting something up and running. So yeah, I think it'd be what's been happening since 2020 has been dealing with things on an ad hoc project level basis anyway. So you know, we could provide support on doing that until we got something up and running if the need rises in the next year or so. But we're a lot further along than we were. So
Another 10 years and you'll be right there.
yeah. Or hopefully the state thing works. So
Great. Yes.
It is good work. A career ago, it took this long to get regional traffic impact fees implementable and functioning, so keep going.
Yeah.
Apologies if I missed it, but there are other places in the state that are doing this. Is there anyone that's like trying something that is like a model to work towards?
Yeah, the two, you know, the one that's the furthest along is down in Western Riverside County. So they have an exchange up and running, which is very similar to what we're proposing here. But they have a background in implementing mitigation programs already. So it was pretty easy for them to port.
Cross-jurisdictional.
Yeah, kind of port directly over. Another issue in Western Riverside County is there's a lot of growth and development happening there. So they need something. So they got something up and running already because there was urgency in getting something up and running. There are other smaller programs that are being rolled out as well, but that's the biggest one that we're aware of. And we did a pretty extensive review of what's going on across the state. But yeah, we've talked with WRCOG and we have a relationship with them. So if we do want to work on implementing something with them, we can talk to them about their lessons
Are
learned.
there any at a single jurisdictional level that you could point anybody to if they want to jump ahead in the queue?
There are,
Larry looks eager.
yeah, there
I have a resting eager face.
There are a few local jurisdiction programs that have been implemented. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. I believe they're outlined in a report. If not, that's something I can find really quickly as well. But yeah, there are some jurisdiction level programs. That's an option as well. So if there's no interest in a county level program, you could take the information and lessons learned that we compiled as part of this report and use it to develop a local exchange or mitigation program too. So, and we'd be happy to help support that effort. If someone were interested in that. And that's one way of getting around that return to source, right? Like if you have a local program, you could fund mitigations within your jurisdiction.
In Santa Rosa, we're not looking at our own BMT type of mitigation program, but we are talking a lot about potential TDM strategies. So we're having a lot of developers come in They do not need to legally provide the amount of parking that we know that they need. They develop because they say we don't have to put that much parking. And then we get a call that says, hey, where are you going to provide parking for us? And we say, oh, that's funny. But so far we've had a precedent with our council where we do offer it. So we're having to figure out what to do. Because there are a lot of issues that have been popping up with that. So we were happy to be involved in this process. One thing we got a little bit worried about is at this point, we only have so much political capital. So when a developer comes in, we could probably get them to put in a flashing beacon. We could get them to they'll have to do the frontage improvements. But if we want anything in addition to that, it's a negotiation. And so we got a little bit worried, like, oh, if they're also participating in this county type of program, would it then mean that we can't get those small wins from the developer? So I'm curious to see when the state starts acting on it, is there more political capital that the local jurisdictions get to require these things? I don't know, but
Right, or if the contributions to the state program makes it harder
yeah.
to do your local improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
All right, no other questions. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate the update. Speaking personally, I'm not sure if everyone in the room feels the same. Item number 6, web tool for travel analysis. Is that Adam?
I'll let Adam take my spot.
To bring this up. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present to you today about a new big data tool that we have access to. It's through our existing provider that we use our travel model through called Bentley. So it's familiar, and it's trying to use some of that same data that is often tracked around kind of cell phone devices when available, vehicles, delivery trucks, trying to evaluate essentially where that those travel patterns are taking place. So I'm just going to log in real quick and join. Share my screen in a second. So the main kind of variables that are available are going to be looking at the average daily traffic flow, so traffic volume, as well as then origins and destinations. So let's see. The few examples that we've brought up, I think in some cases already is actually some with Healdsburg, looking at, for instance, the difference between stations, placements for their smart station, as well as looking sometimes for what we have for the active transportation plans. So when you're trying to evaluate what type of facility should be included on a certain roadway, it's really helpful then to know exactly what that what that travel volume is, so you can then do that facility type appropriately. Let's see. So to show you just a quick little run through of how this all looks, I'll share my screen. Let's see. This could work. All right, so we're starting off with just a map of all of California. That's where we get our whole data set from. So we're actually able to evaluate where travel is coming into Sonoma County from throughout the state. When you're just looking at the map right here, what you're seeing is in the chloropleth, the darker areas are essentially those trips per square mile. So popping out, of course, is some of the more urbanized areas. Right now, we're in the origin destination matrix. So what we can start to understand is showing that when we highlight Sonoma County, we can look at the incoming trips and this is on a daily basis, so about 1.2 million incoming trips. We can also look at outgoing as well too. But what's really interesting then is when you click on Sonoma County, you can start to see where those trips are incoming from. Based off the thickness of the line, for instance, that's commonly called a spider plot. And then the map also changes as well. So we know that most of those trips that are being generated, as we know from our travel behavior survey, are staying within Sonoma County predominantly. However, when we kind of look in second place, there's a close tie between Marin County and San Francisco County. But if we want to go further, we can even look out and say, well, which other counties are coming from? To try to actually then dial in a little bit closer, as you zoom in, let's see, the map, you'll actually then start to look at census tracts as well as census block groups. So if you want to know where people coming to and going from in South Santa Rosa, you can start to then see where those origins and destinations are. Just to switch gears real quickly to look at traffic volumes. This will be then looking at individual roadways and pretty simple, just looking at the north and south daily traffic volume. Give it a second to load. And so this information can be customized as well. If you have a specific geography that you're trying to evaluate, for instance, for SMART, we were looking at comparisons between Cloverdale and from a couple different geographies, from the city limits, from the school district, which was much larger. So tried to capture where those different kind of travel sheds are bringing people into those study areas. So here we're looking at just a few of the main streets. We don't have all of the streets highlighted, but if you wanted to go in and zoom in deeper, you could. Usually it just pops up, but here we see Petaluma Hill Road. Southbound is about 7,600 trips, and then northbound about 9,400. You could also then look at kind of days of week when it's the busiest, what time of day, trip purpose as well. Those variables can be seen as well over on the left if you wanted to screen out for some of these as well too. So gives you ability to essentially look at traffic volumes and origin destination data. They're working on updating their VMT analysis right now. Currently, it's only at the countywide level. Our hopes is that we show them the census places shapefile, which is for all of the United States. So if they can incorporate that into their analysis, then we can start to look at kind of VMT per not only city, but also a lot of the census designated places around the county as well too, which might give a little more perspective for folks. So this is a tool that is unfortunately only available through a single login, but I'm always happy to be able to share this information. If you want to message me, email or Teams, whatever, just have a quick question. If you have a more advanced question, say I'm trying to compare these two different areas, or I want this specific geography analyzed, we can definitely work on that. One of the features that I'm trying to get a little bit more comfortable with is kind of gateways So where are people actually coming and going out of specific kind of entrances to your study area? So if you're trying to look at where people, kind of coming into my area the most, what's the main entryway? That's one of the other possibilities as well too. So it's a pretty powerful tool, kind of equivalent to street light, but probably definitely not as expensive, maybe not quite as powerful, but essentially similar type of analysis and trying to look at these travel patterns and travel flows. So if anybody has any specific questions right now, just to test the tool, feel free. Otherwise, I'm open to just other general questions as well too.
Quick question about like what data they're using. So we work with GHD, and we have traffic engineer that's assigned us, and they help us run analytics kind of similar to this, but their data set is specific to a make and model of a car and a year up, right? So like it's only collecting data from like say all cars that were manufactured by like Chevy from like 2019 up to current, right? So it's like it's showing the data that it can collect from those particular cars. So, when I'm presenting to council, I kind of have to show a disclaimer, like this isn't all of the cars, this is just from the specific subset. So what subset of data does this use?
Great question. So it doesn't specify exactly the that level of detail. That's impressive. What it does describe is that it essentially aggregates different signals. So it could be cell phone signals, car signals, trip signals, and then tries to translate that into trips. Behind the scenes, can't say too much more, but if there's interest, I can for sure try to get more detailed documentation about that. But that's kind of my basic understanding of it. I don't know any limitations per se, but yeah. Yep.
Is this only vehicle data or is it bike and transit?
So yeah, that's another great question. I think it's going to be primarily vehicles, because it says it right there. Otherwise, I might have said something different. But yes, I think it's primarily vehicles. They're trying to look. So I don't think it includes kind of it might include transit, I guess, but let me look into that. That's a great question. They do have some modules that they're trying to look at walking right now that they haven't quite released, and further down the line one for biking. But in terms of vehicles, let me see if that includes public transit or not. The smart train, for instance, isn't on here, so it might be an indication that at least it's probably primarily vehicles, personal vehicles, deliveries, trucks and stuff.
Is there any plan for this to ultimately be available to the agencies directly rather than going through you? Passing out that password?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's an affordable option to be able to do that, but it's something we could potentially look into down the line.
Not necessarily a request, just
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Curious.
But the other challenge is that there's not an easy export of the data as well too. So that's also kind of in a higher subscription that we're paying. So often it's most helpful just kind of jumping on the call or being able to kind of look at what the data is showing, writing it down, taking screenshots, kind of. So
Good.
not ideal, but
Yep.
what we have.
No other questions? Seeing none, thank you for that, Adam. And on to item 7, Sonoma County Map GIS Hub application presentation.
Right, and let's see, we should have. Let's see, is Tim on the line? Don't see. Okay, so maybe I will step in for this one as well. let's see, so the Sonoma County's GIS ISD division is putting together what's called SOCO map. This is essentially a countywide map that's trying to look at a variety of different land use and planning data and centralize it all for the public, for businesses, for planners. Let's see, and so I'll share my screen again real quick. Let's see, so you can get to it by going to just searching SOCO map. And this is the new Sonoma County GIS kind of one-stop shop essentially that they're trying to put together. The SOCO map we'll get into in a second is right here, but it also includes other kind of planning portals, if you will, that try to give that kind of in-depth, up-to-date information that might be related to wastewater treatment, road closures, emergency information, the community health dashboard. And the SOCO map is one specifically that is an interactive map of the county. And where it becomes interesting is that it's primarily parcel based. So as you zoom in and say, click on a parcel, you'll get a pop-up of information that is related to, in this case, we're looking at inside the city limits of Santa Rosa. So we'll get some information around the parcel, assessor data. If you wanted to jump in and look at the assessor role, permitting and zoning information is available. Public safety data related to evacuation, parks, and transportation as well. Now, if you were to, for instance, then click on somewhere outside of Santa Rosa, out in the county, you would then get a whole new set of information. In some cases, here we're back to transportation, which we can focus on, where then you'll be referenced back to Sonoma, Sonoma Pi, information around road closures, and then updated data where there's more information, for instance, around the land use and zoning, because this is a Sonoma County or County of Sonoma led project. A lot of this data is already being shared and integrated in with the SOCO map. And so I think what the interest of Sonoma County ISD GIS is to really try to open this up to the other jurisdictions and really be able to say if there's other data that you would like to be able to have people have access to, for instance, given let's see, jumping back into City of Santa Rosa, there might be more information in here that could be related to some local transportation issues within the city that the county isn't tracking. They presented, Sonoma County ISD GIS presented at the CBPAC earlier this week. So one of the suggestions that came up was, for instance, incorporating the active transportation planning information into this portal. So when you clicked on the transportation, you could say, here's the closest proposed bicycle facilities or kind of some other relevant data. And so they're really kind of opening the door for folks to say, if there is information that you feel like is really necessary within these categories, but maybe even other categories as well too, they have their kind of phase 1 project right here, and they're looking now to phase 2 I'm trying to remember what some of the data was. They should probably bring up their presentation, but they're looking at trying to incorporate more emergency data, for instance, evacuation planning data. And so they're open to other ideas and would really like to fill out kind of some of this data, create those links with the other jurisdictions to be able to report, say, on permitting information if it's of their interest. So then if you're a Sonoma County resident, regardless of what jurisdiction you're in, you can go to this kind of main website and be able to then access the data kind of that could be represented countywide potentially. So in terms of kind of for the TAC, there's ideas here that, we can, I'm not sure, there's nothing that kind of jumps out at me right now that's a specific, like, what if we could upload this data? Wouldn't that be great? There's a lot of, detailed utility data and stuff like that that probably wouldn't be appropriate for putting on here given sensitivities, but that might be like an example if there is some type of utility request, for instance. I think most cities have some type of request for an improvement to, say, like some public infrastructure or something like that. So that might be one idea to say, can we have a utility section here and then there's a request for a service or something like that. So just kind of brainstorming ideas since they're not here to do it, but would love to, just kind of open this up and just see if there's any ideas along those lines that people think could be helpful for trying to really, open up and kind of create that, I think in their words, that one-stop shop for kind of planning purposes for a variety of different audiences. So that'll stop there.
Questions?
Along the same lines of the utilities where it might not be appropriate, like records of surveys or some sort of surveying information might be helpful, but I don't know if that's possible to really share. I know that's really helpful for us. We have like an internal sort of SOCO map like this where we can look up unofficial record of surveys, and it really helps with trying to figure out, how much right away we have. The other thing is like permits, like seeing what sort of active permits, although PRMD already has that site, you can look it up by parcels, but maybe we can link it to PRMD's site. That also helps with some of the projects we work on, like what other active permits are there on properties or businesses that we can collaborate with, or so that might be another option, is linking active permits.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And it brings up something I forgot to mention also, that ISD-GIS has presented this as potentially having two faces also. There's the public face where there's data that everybody can access, and there's kind of the internal ones that might have that utility data or have that permit information more detailed versus just maybe something high level that the public could see for permit data. So that's, for sure. Great idea.
On that same note, would that be just like Sonoma County agencies, or would, for example, like Caltrans be able to access some of that data if there was like two interfaces?
That's a great question for ISD-GIS. My assumption is if they can create that partnership with the local jurisdictions, they can create that partnership of data sharing with, our state-wide jurisdictions, other county-wide agencies like us, for instance, as well too. So that could be. But to think about kind of, where that might apply, like in transportation, for instance, showing Caltrans projects or something like that, current Caltrans projects. So I think the idea is anything that has kind of like an API or can be accessed other places on the internet and brought in and just reported. So when you change your data on your website, it's automatically updated on this website. That's kind of the gold standard that they're trying to probably find to keep all of this easily updated and then reliable with that kind of authoritative data provider.
I only ask that because Caltrans has reached out to the county prior for records of surveys, and I can't like send them unofficial records of surveys, but if they could access
Right.
this site for investigative purposes and then go and request for like the official documentation, that would be like a really good way to collaborate. I mean, as well as with other agencies. But.
Yeah. Do people have any other really cool case studies like that?
I will say, being a longtime SOCO map user from the county side, one of the big benefits of this is all the platforms. We have to hunt around separately. It's all brought into one place. And so it's a good tool, not only for us to use as a county, but as other agencies and the public. The focus is on the public for this access. So it's a big step.
All right, thank you.
Right.
On to item 8.1, the Measure M and Go Sonoma invoice obligation status. It's in your packet unless there's anything else to add. Item 9.1, the inactive obligation status. Only showing one currently inactive. Is there any comment on that?
One agency currently inactive. I would like to make note that that agency has removed several projects since our last meeting though. So I want to acknowledge the hard work that the county is doing in order to get a lot of those inactive projects off the list.
All right. 9.2, state and federal obligation histories.
Yeah, so as we do twice a year, we bring you the history that we put together. We started this a while ago and at the request of the board to provide information to the board members about your obligation status for your state and federal projects. It's not an exhaustive list, but we did try to get as many of the projects that they might be concerned about as possible on there. We are taking this to the board on Monday, so I would request that you all review the projects that are shown here and let us know if there are any inaccuracies or if there is anything that needs to be updated. I have heard from SMART and from Petaluma already, so we did miss a couple of those. I missed a couple of those. So if there's anything that I need to know about, please let me know as soon as possible. Other than that, these should all look pretty familiar.
All right, thank you, Shauna. Item 10, the upcoming SCTCA meeting. Is there any discussion on the December 8th agenda?
Dawn, can you pull that up for us? Okay. Pretty tiny. It is a packed agenda this month because we had to cancel last month and we will not be having a board meeting in January. So it's either this Monday or February for board actions. So there's a lot packed into this agenda. The consent calendar is pretty dense. It will have lots of things on it, including the federal and state obligation history that I just mentioned. It will also have the quarterly reporting from the last quarter, but that didn't quite make October. And then November got canceled. So now it's going in December. We will have another one going to the board probably in January, February for this quarter that is ending. And then we have a number of scope change issues that are going to the board. A couple of major scope changes, one that we heard about last month or previous month from the county, the Airport Boulevard interchange, scope change. And then there was also the Sonoma scope change. City of Sebastopol also has a minor scope change because their bids came in really, really low. So they are able to add a portion to their Go Sonoma project without actually increasing the cost of the project. Yes, very exciting news. So we are, that is an example of a minor scope change, did not have to come to the TAC, will go to the board, but just went through staff review as opposed to having to come to you guys first. We also have a number of cooperative agreements that are going to the board to get those updated and ready to be appropriated for Go Sonoma projects. There's also mitigation fee funding and Measure M. In addition, there's a resolution of local support because we added STIP funding to the 121 8th Street East project. So that needs to have a resolution of local support be provided to MTC so that the funding amount matches what's happening in the programming. Then there are a number of other items. The comprehensive transportation plan, public engagement will be presented. The VMT mitigation program that Chris told you about is going to be presented. The CBTP update is also going to be presented. Yeah, it's a dense, and those are all actually like going to be talked about. So there's a lot on the agenda. Transit integration ad hoc report out, and the Redwood Bike Share report on the first year of the pilot program. There's some other things in there. You guys can see that, but it is a pretty dense agenda. That agenda is already out. So if you would like to review it in further detail, you can find that online.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
Unless there are questions, we are on to roundtable discussion. Speaking of the bidding environment, the low bids you talked about, we had a couple of pre-bids and we had just incredible turnout. So contractors seem pretty hungry right now. If you got a project to get it out soon.
All of our projects are coming in under bid also. Some of them by a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else have anything to share?
Just one, something to share, actually a request as well. MTC is updating their travel model, their regional travel model, and they are requesting any recent traffic counts that have been taken, ideally kind of anything from 2022 onward, kind of post-pandemic, the hardest pandemic years, I guess. So they'll be using those to try to, actually they will, as well as SCTCA will, to be able to calibrate our kind of travel models. If you could send those to either Chris and or I in the next few weeks, that would be helpful. Hopefully they're just easy to find and attach and send off. We can pass those along to MTC and we can have some good, verified counts to include in the modeling. So,
Was there an email request for that or?
No, there's not. It just came up in our regional model working group. But we can maybe just add a request to do a reply, I guess, to the list to the.
Yeah, I would suggest the email. It's a little easier to get everyone.
Okay, yeah.
Meaning I'll forget by Monday.
Right. Fair enough. Okay.
Self-aware of you.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to share with the group?
Just a quick update, Mr. Chair. We have now met with all of the project sponsors, so hopefully everybody has been through that process with us and remembers it. Just a reminder of the schedule. We're anticipating hearing final word from MTC in January or early February about the OBAG 4 program. Then we will finalize our evaluation criteria. Hopefully, we won't have to change anything. And then we will begin the evaluation process of all of those applications that you've submitted. So probably in January, we will come back to you again with a request for anyone who's interested in being on an evaluation team. You are not required. You are highly encouraged to participate if you have the time. It will be a fairly significant lift, but I think it will be beneficial for everyone to see the caliber of projects that are being submitted to the county and find out what's going on in other areas, and to see what these applications look like, what you think are good applications. So.
All right, thank you. All right, item 12.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you.